It's amazing to think that in a year that has already had multiple exceptional releases, including a new Persona, a new Like a Dragon, a new Final Fantasy, and most baffling of all, a new Dragon's Dogma. Gosh, what lucky pups are we? The one game that's been occupying my headspace the most is a weird little poker roguelike called Balatro. Exploding onto the scene seemingly out of nowhere, LocalThunk's inventive reimagining of the original deck builder is an experience seeped in its own bafflingly paradoxical nature. This video is here to explain what I mean by this. However, in order to talk about what Balatro does so brilliantly and why it's so weird, I first need to talk about another equally brilliant weird game. While not the first deck-building roguelike on the market, Slay the Spire is certainly one of the genre's most formative entries. A sprawling, complex web of interactions, alchemical in nature, fiendishly difficult and wildly empowering, Slay the Spire is the game all the big boys want to play. An encounter-based dungeon crawler by design, as you climb the titular spire, facing down hordes of foes and navigating terrible traps, you build up an arsenal of symbiotic abilities represented as a deck of cards. Attacks that trigger other attacks, moves that debilitate and desecrate your foes, poisons, paralytics, strength sappers, shields upon shields upon shields. This push and pull in combat gives rise to a staggeringly vast array of choices built around the luck of the draw and your frugal energy pool. You can be a serial poisoner, a health-chipping bulwark, a glass cannon, a shiv-flinging shinobi, or even simply a guy pondering his many, many orbs. Slay the Spire is a remarkably sophisticated game, beautifully designed to within an inch of its life, and what makes it work so well is that it lets the cards do the talking. To you, to your foe, and to each other. It makes the act of unlocking new cards a thrilling prospect, as each new addition to your deck brings with it the opportunity to imagine the realm of synergies and strategies that lie in wait. The reason I'm talking about Slay the Spire in a video about Balatro should be fairly obvious to anyone who's played these games. For the uninitiated, both titles have a certain degree of similarity, where success is built around making choices early on about what kind of player you want to be, and manipulating the systems at play to breaking point and beyond. But where Slay the Spire is a game you really have to learn to play from the ground up, reveling in the spiraling complexity of its battle system and ultimately inseparable from those intricate layers of design, Balatro does an interesting thing with its core mechanics. It's just poker. That's the game. Poker, you know, pairs and flushes and straights and all that James Bond shit. Okay, it's actually closer in design to Big 2, using the same deck and scoring system, but Big 2 roguelike just doesn't have the same sexy marketing pull, so please forgive me this small amount of misinformation. The foundations of what you do on any given run of Balatro is instantly recognisable to anyone familiar with a standard 52 deck of playing cards and a perennially divorced uncle. Play hands, score points, up the ante, failure to meet the points threshold in any given round, and it's game over. It's so simple an idea, these elements work together so naturally, and yet to call Balatro merely a poker roguelike feels a bit disingenuous, for reasons that will quickly become clear. Starting from this foundation of an already established centuries-old card game is a brilliant step, because it implicitly understands that the deck by itself already provides an incalculable variety of combinations. So you begin every run already with an idea in your head about what sort of cards you're looking for, what combinations will bring the sweet smell of success to your nostrils, as well as a gentle understanding that you won't always get what you want and will have to figure out new strategies on the fly. It's intuitive enough that in the beginning you don't even really need to explicitly know its rules. The game does help you with this by having a cheat sheet to hand whenever you need it, and Balatro's score preview lets you know off the bat which combinations of cards are better than others, but, and not to be too caveman about this, big number good taps into that primal, screaming animalistic part of our brains, so much so that the rest of the game is dedicated to silencing it. Even with the most impeccable luck of the draw, it becomes clear as the rounds progress that you can't just rely on picking the right cards to progress you through to the next ante, and it is here that the game becomes a lot more interesting. In a traditional card game, the point of the hands is that you are playing off against other players with hidden information, a big part of strategy is this psychological layer of trying to understand what sort of cards your opponents have by the expressions on their faces, their body language, their choice of words, but in a pure scoring sense there is a cap on what the winning hand can be. Games like Poker and Big Two are all about this self-sustaining ecosystem, a walled garden of design that's built around this idea of relationships and strategy. Balatro, in its infinite wisdom, chooses to pull the walls down and invite other players to the table. The core experience is much the same: randomly allocated cards, hands built out of what you have and then presented for scrutiny. But because you aren't facing off against an opponent engaging with the same rules of play, instead an incorporeal score attack quantity, a second, more complex game starts to be played. Almost immediately into a run, you start getting access to card modifiers you can buy between rounds that increase the chip payout, the score multiplier, the total score multiplier, or even chucking you a few bucks whenever you use said card. But in order to have a chance of actually beating a run, you need to engage with the jokers. And no, I don't mean Joaquin, Caesar, Heath, Jack, Jared, Mark, or Barry. In the realms of the real, these additional cards in the deck act as a sort of weird use case outlier whose practicality depends entirely on a set of rules dictated by game masters. A joker can be everything or it can be nothing, and their malleability juxtaposed with their niche utility gives them a sort of weird, uncomfortable vibe that this game capitalizes on perfectly. Each joker has a specific function it performs once you play a hand. Some are simple, adding to the chip and multiplier values of any given card or hand. Others re-trigger certain types of card or upgrade hands with each use, adding their own score multiplier in relation to which cards you've played and which other jokers you possess, or giving you extra cash payouts to spend in the shop between rounds. The element of Balatro most like Slay the Spire lies here. Jokers not only modify your actions considerably, they also begin to dictate what actions you choose, what card combinations you desire, and it is through this that the game's complexity only increases. Big number good exits the building, the player is forced to evolve. Balatro at its heart is a game about combos. A core run lasts 8 antes, each with 3 rounds apiece, and with each round the target score increases exponentially, starting in the low hundreds and eventually reaching 6 figures. At least in the core run, that is, because as you quickly realise there are ways to raise the ante beyond 8, and the more you do, the more the score becomes an incalculable eldritch nightmare. Some of these target scores, they can't be uttered out loud in a human lifetime, and being a wavering Disgaea fan, this exponential numerical growth entices me wildly and also sort of breaks my brain a little. In order to chase those high scores, you need to think tactically about what you have access to and how these elements interact with each other. In Slay the Spire, the focus is almost solely on the deck, even if combat is bolstered by additional powers called artifacts and a small non-essential supply of potions that might get you out of a rough spot once in a while but won't win for you. You need to understand how your cards work, otherwise you simply will not make it. Because we already know how the cards work in Balatro, the focus shifts to a conversation with the group as a whole. Not just the cards, not just the jokers, but the whole shebang. Very early on, you'll find that there are other cards that impact aspects of the game, but you might not realise straight away that every one of these things has a potential role in the ecosystem you create for yourself. Planet cards upgrade your hand's points payout, tarot cards change the nature of individual cards, or even if you're lucky upgrade your jokers. Booster packs give you extra cards to add to your deck that often have additional effects when you play them or keep them in your deck. Each of these things has an effect on your decision making process, an extra tactical layer to consider in not only which hands you play, but also in which order you place the cards in that hand and which order you set your jokers up in, and even whether you actually use one of these modifiers right away or keep it because its mere presence impacts your score. And then, with success, you not only unlock new cards, but also new decks with modified stakes that up the challenge and further push you into strategy wizard territory. There's a remarkable breadth of ways to play Balatro, and this is why we can consider the game a roguelike despite at the same time it being just a card game. That systemic evolution over time builds into this impeccable sequence of ideas and processes and interactions that copulate and conflict and give birth to concepts that break the game wide open. When I first played Balatro, I wasn't entirely sure if it had the legs to keep my attention the way Slay the Spire or Dicey Dungeons or even Spelunky does. It was fun and fiendishly Moorish, but because I was so focused on it being just a card game, I couldn't see the forest for the trees. 40 plus in-game hours later, my feelings have changed. This is a game I shelved Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for, a game I've put 2 other projects on hold to talk about. It really is that good. Different antes, different decks, different stakes, the rules change, but the cards, they always stay the same. A pair is a pair, a straight is a straight, a flush is a flush. The end result of all this design, all these creative choices, is that Balatro drills down to the core of what makes card games so appealing. By creating thousands of possible variations without really changing the base nature of cards themselves or the way they work, LocalThunk has somehow performed the miracle of simultaneously preserving the integrity of an original game and fundamentally altering it to the point of being unrecognizable in the same space at the same time. That's the Balatro paradox. Complexity through simplicity, the alien born from the familiar, a thing of transcendental beauty and, ultimately, just a card game.